Glasgow is the largest city in Scotland, and the third largest in the United Kingdom. Historically part of Lanarkshire, it is now one of the 32 council areas of Scotland. It is situated on the River Clyde in the country's West Central Lowlands. Inhabitants of the city are often referred to as Glaswegians. Glasgow grew from a small rural settlement on the River Clyde to become the largest seaport in Britain, expanding from the medieval bishopric and royal borough, and the later establishment of the University of Glasgow in the 15th century. It became a major centre of the Scottish Enlightenment in the 18th century. For the 18th century, the city also grew as one of Great Britain's main hubs of transatlantic trade with North America and the West Indies. With the onset of the Industrial Revolution, the population and economy of Glasgow and the surrounding region expanded rapidly to become one of the world's preeminent centres of chemicals, textiles and engineering, most notably in the shipbuilding and marine engineering industry, which produced many innovative and famous vessels. Glasgow was the second city of the British Empire for much of the Victorian era and Edwardian period, although many cities argue the title was theirs. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Glasgow grew in population, reaching a peak of 1,128,473 in 1939. Comprehensive urban renewal projects in the 1960s, resulting in large-scale relocation of people to new towns and peripheral suburbs, followed by successive boundary changes, reduced the population of the City of Glasgow council area to 599,650 with 1,209,143 people living in the Greater Glasgow urban area. The entire region surrounding the conurbation covers about 2.3 million people, 41% of Scotland's population. At the 2011 census, Glasgow had a population density of 8,790 square mi, the highest of any Scottish city. Glasgow hosted the 2014 Commonwealth Games. Glasgow is also well known in the sporting world for the football rivalry of the Old Firm between Celtic and Rangers. Glasgow is also known for Glasgow Patter, a distinct dialect that is noted for being difficult to understand for most. History, origins and development. The present site of Glasgow has been settled since prehistoric times. It is for settlement, being the furthest downstream fording point of the River Clyde, at its confluence with the Bjmullan burn. After the Romans left Caledonia, the settlement was part of the extensive kingdom of Strathclyde, with its capital at Dumbarton 15 miles downstream, which merged in the 9th century with other regions to create the United Kingdom of Scotland. The origins of Glasgow as an established city derive ultimately from its medieval position as Scotland's second largest bishopric. Glasgow increased in importance during the 10th and 11th centuries as the site of this bishopric, reorganised by King David I of Scotland and John, Bishop of Glasgow. There had been an earlier religious site established by St Mungo in the 6th century. The bishopric became one of the largest and wealthiest in the Kingdom of Scotland, bringing wealth and status to the town. Between 1175 and 1178, this position was strengthened even further when Bishop Jocelyn obtained for the episcopal settlement the status of borough from King William I of Scotland, allowing the settlement to expand with the benefits of trading monopolies and other legal guarantees. Sometime between 1189 and 1195, this status was supplemented by an annual fair, which survives as the Glasgow Fair. Glasgow grew over the following centuries. The first bridge over the River Clyde at Glasgow was recorded from around 1285, giving its name to the Brigate area of the city, forming the main north-south route over the river via Glasgow Cross. The founding of the University of Glasgow in 1451 and elevation of the bishopric to become the Archdiocese of Glasgow in 1492 increased the town's religious and educational status and landed wealth. Its early trade was in agriculture, brewing and fishing, with cured salmon and herring being exported to Europe and the Mediterranean. Following the Reformation and with the encouragement of the Convention of Royal Burghs, the 14 incorporated trade crafts federated as the Trades House in 1605 to match the power and influence in the town council of the earlier merchants' guilds who established the Merchants' House in the same year. Glasgow was subsequently raised to the status of royal borough in 1611. Glasgow's substantial fortunes came from international trade, manufacturing and invention, starting in the 17th century with sugar, followed by tobacco, and then cotton and linen. Daniel Defoe visited the city in the early 18th century and famously opined in his book A Tour Through the Whole Island of Great Britain, that Glasgow was the cleanest and beautifulest and best-built city in Britain, London excepted. At the time the city's population was about 12,000, and the city was yet to undergo the massive expansionary changes to its economy and urban fabric, brought about by the Scottish Enlightenment and Industrial Revolution. Trading port. After the Acts of Union in 1707, Scotland gained further access to the vast markets of the new British Empire, and Glasgow became prominent as a hub of international trade to and from the Americas, especially in sugar, tobacco, cotton, and manufactured goods. The city's tobacco lords created a deep water port at Port Glasgow on the Firth of Clyde, as the river within the city itself was then too shallow. By the late 18th century, more than half of the British tobacco trade was concentrated on Glasgow's River Clyde, with over £47 million of tobacco being imported each year at its peak. At the time, Glasgow held a commercial importance as the city participated in the trade of sugar, tobacco and later cotton. Industrialisation. The opening of the Monkland Canal and basin linking to the Forth and Clyde Canal at Port Dundas in 1795 facilitated access to the extensive iron ore and coal mines in Lanarkshire. After extensive river engineering projects to dredge and deepen the River Clyde as far as Glasgow, shipbuilding became a major industry on the upper stretches of the river, pioneered by industrialists such as Robert Napier, John Elder, George Thomson, Sir William Pearce and Sir Alfred Jarrow. The River Clyde also became an important source of inspiration for artists such as John Atkinson Grimshaw, John Knox, James Kay, Sir Muirhead-Bone, Robert Eady, Stanley Spencer and L.S. Lowry, willing to depict the new industrial era and the modern world. Glasgow's population had surpassed that of Edinburgh by 1821. The development of civic institutions included the City of Glasgow Police in 1800, one of the first municipal police forces in the world. Despite the crisis caused by the City of Glasgow Bank's collapse in 1878, growth continued, and by the end of the 19th century it was one of the cities known as the second city of the empire, and was producing more than half Britain's tonnage of shipping and a quarter of all locomotives in the world. In addition to its pre-eminence in shipbuilding, engineering, industrial machinery, bridge building, chemicals, explosives, coal and oil industries are developed as a major centre in textiles, garment making, carpet manufacturing, leather processing, furniture making, pottery, food, drink and cigarette making, printing and publishing, shipping, banking, insurance and professional services expanded at the same time. Glasgow became one of the first cities in Europe to reach a population of 1 million. The city's new trades and sciences attracted new residents from across the lowlands and the highlands of Scotland, from other parts of Britain and Ireland and from continental Europe. During this period, the construction of many of the city's greatest architectural masterpieces and most ambitious civil engineering projects, such as the Milngavie Water Treatment Works, Glasgow Subway, Glasgow Corporation Tramways, City Chambers, Mitchell Library and Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum were being funded by its wealth. The city also held a series of international exhibitions at Kelvingrove Park in 1888, 1901 and 1911, with Britain's last major international exhibition, the Empire Exhibition, being subsequently held in 1938 at Bellahouston Park, which drew 13 million visitors. The 20th century witnessed both decline and renewal in the city. After World War I, the city suffered from the impact of the post-World War I recession and from the later Great Depression. This also led to a rise of radical socialism and the Red Clyde Side movement. The city had recovered by the outbreak of World War II and grew through the post-war boom that lasted through the 1950s. By the 1960s, growth of industry in countries like Japan and West Germany weakened the once preeminent position of many of the city's industries. As a result of this, Glasgow entered a lengthy period of relative economic decline and rapid industrialization, leading to high unemployment, urban decay, population decline, welfare dependency and poor health for the city's inhabitants. There were active attempts at regeneration of the city when the Glasgow Corporation published its controversial Bruce Report, which set out a comprehensive series of initiatives aimed at turning round the decline of the city. The report led to a huge and radical program of rebuilding and regeneration efforts that started in the mid-1950s and lasted into the late 1970s. This involved the mass demolition of the city's infamous slums and the replacement with large suburban housing estates and tower blocks. The city invested heavily in roads infrastructure, with an extensive system of arterial roads and motorways that bisected the central area. There are also accusations that the Scottish Office had deliberately attempted to undermine Glasgow's economic and political influence in post-war Scotland by diverting inward investment in new industries to other regions during the Silicon Glen boom and creating the new towns of Cumbernauld, Glenrothes, Irvine, Livingston and East Kilbride, dispersed across the Scottish lowlands to halve the city's population base. By the late 1980s, there had been a significant resurgence in Glasgow's economic fortunes. The Glasgow's Miles Better campaign, launched in 1983, and opening of the Burrell Collection in 1983 and Scottish Exhibition and Conference Centre in 1985 facilitated Glasgow's new role as a European centre for business services and finance and promoted an increase in tourism and inward investment. The latter continues to be bolstered by the legacy of the city's Glasgow Garden Festival in 1988, its status as European City of Culture in 1990, and concerted attempts to diversify the city's economy. Wider economic revival has persisted and the ongoing regeneration of inner-city areas, including the large-scale Clyde waterfront regeneration, has led to more affluent people moving back to live in the centre of Glasgow, fueling allegations of gentrification. The city is now considered by Lonely Planet to be one of the world's top 10 tourist cities. Despite Glasgow's economic renaissance, the east end of the city remains the focus of social deprivation. A Glasgow Economic Audit report published published in 2007, stated that the gap between prosperous and deprived areas of the city is widening. In 2006, 47% of Glasgow's population lived in the most deprived 15% of areas in Scotland, while the Centre for Social Justice reported 29.4% of the city's working-age residents to be economically inactive. Although marginally behind the UK average, Glasgow still has a higher employment rate than Birmingham, Liverpool and Manchester. In 2008, the city was ranked at 43 for personal safety in the Mercer Index of top 50 safest cities in the world. The Mercer report was specifically looking at quality of living, yet by 2011 within Glasgow, certain areas were failing to meet the Scottish air quality objective levels for nitrogen dioxide and particulate matter. Toponymy. It is common to derive the name Glasgow from the older Cambric Glas Cau or a Middle Gaelic cognate, which would have meant green basin or green valley. The settlement probably had an earlier Cambric name, Cathurs. The modern name appears for the first time in the Gaelic period as Glasgow. It is also recorded that the King of Strathclyde, Rather Kyle, welcomed St Kentigern, and procured his consecration as bishop about 540. For some 13 years Kentigern laboured in the region, building his church at the Mollendina Burn, and making many converts. A large community developed around him and became known as Glasgow Heraldry. The coat of arms of the city of Glasgow was granted to the royal borough by the Lord Lyon on the 25th of October 1866. It incorporates a number of symbols and emblems associated with the life of Glasgow's patron saint, Mungo, which had been used on official seals prior to the date. The emblems represent miracles supposed to have been performed by Mungo and are listed in the traditional rhyme. Here's the bird that never flew. Here's the tree that never grew. Here's the bell that never rang. Here's the fish that never swam. St Mungo is also said to have preached a sermon containing the words, Lord, let Glasgow flourish by the preaching of the word and the praising of thy name. This was abbreviated to Let Glasgow Flourish and adopted as the city's motto. In 1450, John Stewart, the first Lord Provost of Glasgow, left an endowments of that a St Mungo's bell could be made and tolled throughout the city so that the citizens would pray for his soul. A new bell was purchased by the magistrates in 1641 and that bell is still on display in the People's Palace Museum near Glasgow Green. The supporters are two salmon-bearing rings, and the crest is a half-length figure of St Mungo. He wears a bishop's mitre and liturgical vestments and has his hand raised in the act of benediction. The original 1866 grant placed the crest atop a helm, but this was removed in subsequent grants. The current version has a gold mural crown between the shield and the crest. This form of coronet, resembling an embattled city wall, was allowed to the 4 area councils with city status. The arms were rematriculated by the City of Glasgow District Council on 6 February 1975, and by the present Area Council on 25 March 1996. The only change made on each occasion was in the type of coronet over the arms. Local government. Although Glasgow Corporation had been a pioneer in the municipal socialist movement from the late 19th century, since the Representation of the People Act 1918, Glasgow increasingly supported left-wing ideas and politics at a national level. The city council was controlled by the Labour Party for over 30 years, since the decline of the Progressives. Since 2007, when local government government elections in Scotland began to use the single transferable vote rather than the first-past-the-post system. The dominance of the Labour Party within the city has declined, but it remains one of only two local authorities, along with North Lanarkshire, where Labour maintains an outright majority over the other parties. In the aftermath of the Russian Revolution of 1917 and the German Revolution of 1918–1919, the city's frequent strikes and militant organisations caused serious alarm at Westminster, with one uprising in January 1919 prompting the Prime Minister, David Lloyd George, to deploy 10,000 troops and tanks on the city's streets. A huge demonstration in the city's George Square on the 31st of January ended in violence after the Riot Act was read. Industrial action at the shipyards gave rise to the Red Clyde side epithet. During the 1930s, Glasgow was the main base of the Independent Labour Party. Towards the end of the 20th century it became a centre of the struggle against the poll tax, and then the main base of the Scottish Socialist Party, a left-wing party in Scotland. The city has not had a Conservative MP since the 1982 Hillhead by-election, when the SDP took the seat, which was in Glasgow's wealthiest area. The general political bias against the Conservative Party continued, and as at 2016, they have only one of the 79 councillors on Glasgow City Council. Despite having been the controlling party from 1969 to 1972, when Sir Donald Liddell was the last non-Labour Lord Provost, Glasgow is represented in both the Westminster Parliament in London and the Scottish Parliament in Holyrood, Edinburgh. At Westminster, it is represented by 7 members of Parliament, all elected at least once every 5 years to represent individual constituencies, using the first-past-the-post system of voting. In Holyrood, Glasgow is represented by 16 MSPs, of whom 9 are elected to represent individual constituencies once every 4 years using first-past-the-post, and 7 are elected as additional regional members by proportional representation. Since the Scottish Parliament election 2011, Glasgow is represented at Holyrood by 7 Scottish National Party MSPs, 7 Labour MSPs, 1 Conservative MSP and 1 Scottish Green MSP. In the European Parliament, the city forms part of the Scotland constituency, which elects 6 members of the European Parliament. Scottish independence referendum. At the Scottish independence referendum held on the 18th of September 2014, Glasgow was one of the 4 out of 32 local council areas that voted in favour of Scottish independence, with 53.5% voting yes at the referendum. The turnout was 75%, the lowest in Scotland. Results by Scottish Parliament constituency central government. Since Glasgow is covered and operates under 2 separate central governments, the Scotland and UK governments, they determine various matters that Glasgow City Council is not responsible for. Scottish Government and AMP Parliament. The Glasgow electoral region of the Scottish Parliament covers the Glasgow City Council area, the Rutherglen area of the South Lanarkshire and a small eastern portion of Renfrewshire. It elects 9 of the Parliament's 73 first-past-the-post constituency members and 7 of the 56 additional members. Both kinds of member are known as members of the Scottish Parliament. The system of election is designed to produce a form of proportional representation. The first-past-the-post seats were created in 1999 with the names and boundaries of then-existing Westminster constituencies. In 2005, the number of Westminster members of Parliament representing Scotland was cut to 59, with new constituencies being formed, while the existing number of MSPs was retained at Holyrood. In the 2011 Scottish Parliament election, the boundaries of the Glasgow region were redrawn. Currently, the 9 Scottish Parliament constituencies in the Glasgow electoral region are Glasgow and Island, Glasgow Cathcart, Glasgow Kelvin, Glasgow Maryhill and Springburn, Glasgow Pollock, Glasgow Provan, Glasgow Shettleston, Glasgow Southside, Rutherglen. On the constituency element of the vote, the Glasgow electoral region is represented by 9 Scottish National MSPs. On the regional vote, the Glasgow electoral region is represented by 4 Labour MSPs, 2 Conservative MSPs and 1 Green MSP. UK Government and AMP Parliament. Following reform of constituencies of the House of Commons of the Parliament of the United Kingdom in 2005, which reduced the number of Scottish members of Parliament, the current Westminster constituencies representing Glasgow are Glasgow Central, Glasgow East, Glasgow North, Glasgow North East, Glasgow North West, Glasgow South, Glasgow South West. Following the referendum, the SNP won every constituency in the city at the 2015 general election, including a record-breaking 39.3% swing in the seat of Glasgow North East. Glasgow is currently represented by 6 Scottish National MPs, with 1 independent MP in Glasgow East. Geography. Glasgow is located on the banks of the River Clyde in West Central Scotland. Its second most important river is the Kelvin, whose name was used in creating the title of Baron Kelvin and thereby ended up as the SI unit of temperature. On older maps, Glasgow is shown within the area of the pre-1975 county of Lanarkshire. From 1975 to 1996 it appears within Strathclyde region. More recent maps will generally show Glasgow as one of 32 council areas in Scotland. Location. Climate. Despite its northerly latitude, similar to that of Moscow, Glasgow's climate is classified as oceanic. Data is available online for 3 official weather stations in the Glasgow area: Paisley, Abbotssinch and Bishopton. All are located to the west of the city centre. Owing to its westerly position and proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, Glasgow is one of Scotland's milder areas. Temperatures are usually higher than most places of equal latitude away from the UK, due to the warming influence of the Gulf Stream. However, this results in less distinct seasons as compared to much of Western Europe. At Paisley, the annual precipitation averages 1,245 mm. Winters are cool and overcast, with a January mean of 5.0 degrees Celsius, though lows sometimes fall below freezing. Since 2000, Glasgow has experienced few very cold, snowy and harsh winters where temperatures have fallen much below freezing. The most extreme instances have, however, seen temperatures around -12 degrees Celsius in the area. Snowfall accumulation is infrequent and short-lived. The spring months are usually mild and often quite pleasant. Many of Glasgow's trees and plants begin to flower at this time of the year, and parks and gardens are filled with spring colors. During the summer months, the weather can vary considerably from day to day, ranging from relatively cool and wet to quite warm with the odd sunny day. Long dry spells of warm weather are generally very scarce. Overcast and humid conditions without rain are frequent. Generally, the weather pattern is quite unsettled and erratic during these months, with only occasional heatwaves. The warmest month is usually July, with average highs above 20 degrees Celsius. Summer days can occasionally reach up to 27 degrees Celsius and very rarely exceed 30 degrees Celsius. Autumns are generally cool to mild with increasing precipitation. During early autumn there can be some settled periods of weather and it can feel pleasant with mild temperatures and some sunny days. The official Met Office data series goes back to 1959 and shows that there only have been a few warm and no hot summers in Glasgow, in stark contrast to areas further south in Great Britain and eastwards in Europe. The warmest month on record in the data series is July 2006, with an average high of 22.7 degrees Celsius and low of 13.7 degrees Celsius. Even this extreme event only matched a normal summer on similar parallels in continental Europe, underlining the maritime influences. The coldest month on record since the data series began is December 2010, during a severe cold wave affecting the British Isles. Even then, the December high was above freezing at 1.6 degrees Celsius with the low of -4.4 degrees Celsius. This still ensured Glasgow's coldest month of 2010 remained milder than the isotherm of -3 degrees Celsius normally used to determine continental climate. Normals. Temperature extremes have ranged from -19.9 degrees Celsius to 31.2 degrees Celsius at Abbotssinch, and -14.8 degrees Celsius to 31.0 degrees Celsius at Paisley.